Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. And are we going to give Antonia an opportunity to talk about what she's going to do? Is that part of your...
That is part of the plan.
Great.
Oh,
okay.
Right. Okay. Hi, Sarah. Sarah's just joining us. Okay, so the my plan this evening was to build on the theme that we had during Shiatsu Awareness Month, which is that idea of making connections. And as you will probably know, we have just recruited a very key person to help us make those connections. So she's not able to stay for the whole meeting. So if I introduce Antonia and let her introduce herself, then if you have to leave, you will have introduced yourself. And so we won't miss that opportunity of getting to know you. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Antonia.
Let's see. Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to meet you, and I do apologize for not being able to stay for the whole meeting. It's outside my working hours, and today has been a particularly busy one, but I promise that in the future I'll be able to stay much longer. So I recently joined as the digital marketing coordinator. I've been working in marketing through various type of opportunities for about 10 years now, and my main role within the Shiatsu Society will be to indeed enhance the connections that we have and to hopefully raise the awareness about Shiatsu. So I'll be handling all the social media platforms. I'll be taking care of pretty much all the marketing material. I'm still getting used to the whole structure and to the society itself and to Shiatsu as a practice. I'm not a practitioner myself. I am a yoga teacher and I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I'm also a human design consultant, but I haven't had the chance to get as involved as I would like to at some point with Shiatsu. So pretty much everything you'll see from social media will be coming from me. I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. I want to know what your needs are, what you're struggling with, what type of content you'd like to see along the way, and hopefully get to know each other a bit better along the way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Lovely, right? I'm sure it's going to be great. We've had an exciting time so far, haven't we, Elaine, with the new team?
Yeah, we did. We had we managed to facilitate a meeting, which was really nice, to meet all 3 new staff. Excuse me, and Greg as well, who's our admin, education admin person. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of the directors managed to meet as well, which was really nice because due to COVID and various financial things, we actually haven't been able to meet in person at all. So that was really quite a momentous event anyway, and it was very inspiring because of Antonia's presentation, and then being able to get together and just share ideas and swap around as to what it is that we're aiming to do and where we're going. So it's yes, an exciting time for the society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And really, really nice that Antonia is opening things up and saying, what do you need? And then that means that you, the members, can kind of throw in your ideas, which is what we desperately need. Connection is all about a two-way thing, and the board and the society can sort of suggest, well, you might like to look at this, or what about that, or we've created this, but we need to actually know what you guys want. So tell us what you want. Absolutely. And then we will see what we can do. Can't promise everything, but we'll see what we can do.
Absolutely. So I've put together a presentation, but that's not because I want to bore you by PowerPoint, but it's just that makes it easier when we put this onto the website for people who weren't able to come today to watch. It's easier for them to follow if we've kind of got everything a little bit metal, should we say. So I promise you I won't bore you with PowerPoint, but I'm just going to share my screen so that you can. Right. Okay, so the cunning plan is, as I say, to build on what we started in the Shiatsu Awareness Month, thinking about connections of all sorts, really. And I suppose, I mean, I hate to say the word manifesto, we've had enough of that, haven't we, in the last month or so, but really to share our vision going forward of what the sharing space can be. And I think from my point of view, and I imagine that the others will agree with me, I see the sharing space, very much supported by Antonia, as an opportunity to magnify the key. So all of us together sharing. So in since I took over working with the sharing space, the most inspiring projects that I've been involved in are the ones where members send stuff in that we can then turn into a resource for everybody. And I'm very keen to continue to develop that, really. So that's where we're going, and these are some of the ideas. So I'll run through it. You'll see it unpacks quite beautifully. It's quite systematic, and then at the end it's open to the floor for everybody to give me some ideas. Okay, so just so happens that I can't claim that it was my idea, because here it is in the DAO. So I won't read this to you. I'll just leave it up there for a moment so that you can have a read through for yourselves. But this is basically an idea of how we could go forward. I did have a little bit of fun with trying to pick which translation I was going to put up here, actually. So it's different ones change the meaning very slightly, but hey, okay. So what I'm thinking about is that idea of starting with ourselves as practitioners and how those ripples go out, as it says in the DAO, to take over the world. Not quite, but out into the wider community and everything that we touch. So those are the kind of how the ripples might work. So we just begin by thinking about ourselves. And I think something that I'm very aware of, I mean, I've moved to an area of the country where I have, well, I think I have now found one other Shiatsu practitioner, but because where I live is very rural, that's still an hour's drive. But I think also as a hangover from COVID times and lockdown, I think everything is still a little bit out of kilter. And as we're trying to get ourselves back into practice and back on our feet and get things readjust to what the new normal is, it's very easy to begin by reaching out and forget to center ourselves before we start. So I'm very keen on the idea of having resources and ideas available so that we can actually make sure that we center ourselves before we start to reach out. So that idea of making space, and I know that since I've moved to a new area and started trying to set up my own practice, that I am particularly bad at starting in the beginning with myself, and I have to remind myself of that all the time. So I'm quite sure that I'm not the only person that has happened to, and I think there probably are things that we can do. It's very, as we've become more online, and as Elaine said when we were talking about how the board has been working, we're very connected digitally, but I don't know how, whether we've actually forgotten about that, literally grounding ourselves in our own space and starting from that starting point. And then the next layer in the ripples, can ripples layer, I don't know, but anyway, just thinking about other members of the Shiatsu society. So again, we've got quite good at meeting on Zoom calls and things like that, but actually I don't think that there's any substitute for meeting in person, and finding ways of doing that. And certainly the biggest, for myself anyway, in the last kind of year or so, it was at the Shiatsu College Residential, was the biggest group of practitioners that I've been with for a while. And what was very interesting was that those weird couple of years over COVID times, and then as we're coming out of it, everybody's experiences were very different. So there were people who had profoundly life-changing experiences, and other people who weren't touched by the same sorts of things. And some of those habits that we got into, I think, have changed how we relate to people. I mean, I've noticed in other areas of life that yeah, we're doing things slightly differently, and we are less likely, I think, to be connected with people. So in the general run of things, for example, there seems to be much less what I would call kind of casual connection. People are natter with each other, but I was noticing on the tennis even that when they do their post-match interviews, the interviewer and the person who's won the match are still miles apart from each other. And I think that there is still some of that, and that the importance of touch, which is so central to our practice, is still something that we're readjusting to, and there's a huge space for Shiatsu to help us readjust to that and bring that back in. I mean, you notice there lots and lots of things where people have just got used to distancing themselves from one another, and I think that as practitioners, the more we can do that with each other and be easy with that, the more that we'll then be able to take that out to other people that we meet along the way. So some of the things that I'm suggesting that our sharing space could do is to try and facilitate more actual physical sharing spaces, thinking about swaps, thinking about ways of people being able to mentor one another. And possibly, and it's very interesting that Elaine was just talking about Hannah up in Manchester wanting to get some feedback about how they can reach out a bit more. That idea about linking with more formal groups like the Shiatsu schools, so that there's some way of them, at least in the beginning, becoming a bit of a focal point while we begin to rebuild some of those things. And then another interesting experience that I had, and it's happened a couple of times recently, once with somebody who seems to have been searching the internet, and she lives in Kent. She managed to find me in Lincolnshire, where she had a relative. And she said, oh, I didn't even know there were any Shiatsu practitioners in Lincolnshire. But I mean, obviously she was looking. But she had been a Shiatsu practitioner, and also when I went to the residential, there were some people who had been away from Shiatsu and wanted a gentle introduction to come back in. I feel sure that there are a lot of people who, maybe even over COVID times, have found themselves a bit disconnected, and for us to find a way of drawing them back into the family. So we now have our Friends of Shiatsu category in the membership, and I think if you've been away, it's sometimes quite hard to come back. If it's been a very long time since you've actually been practicing and had your hands on somebody, that can feel very daunting. So it's that way of us drawing people in and holding that space for them and allowing them to rediscover something that they had been doing before. So I'm not entirely sure how, if people have lost contact with any Shiatsu at all, how we reach out to them, but I'm sure that somebody will have an idea about how we can actually do that. I think nice informal settings often don't feel too threatening, and a nice way of enabling people to make that reconnection. And maybe again, linking up with schools, one thing that the schools could be doing is actually when they're having student clinics and things, is think about people that they haven't been in touch with for donkey's years, invite them back, and you know, offer them the opportunity to have a nice half an hour on a futon. But it occurred to me that that is a big group of people who we can bring back into the fold. Oh, lost my little icon. There we go. Okay. And then actually it's very interesting that Antonia was saying that she has experience of yoga and Reiki, but she hadn't had experience of Shiatsu. Well, I think that a lot of us probably share our practice spaces with other practitioners, or we have other opportunities where we can actually both experience their modalities and share ours with them. And I think that especially with the idea of getting Shiatsu out there and better known, I think that there's probably a lot of mileage in finding the crossover. So I mean, for example, when people are doing yin yoga, or well, lots of different things, lots and lots of Tai Chi and Qigong crosses over beautifully with Shiatsu. So that idea about finding ways of doing joint sessions and finding the commonality, and in that then as well as other practitioners then being able to talk a bit more knowledgeably about what our practice is, that also their clients will experience that too. So I think that that's another good way of making those connections. And then from that, thinking about going out into our communities. So my own experience of doing this is that you have to be a little bit of a detective to find out what's going on. And you have to devote a bit of time to actually doing some networking and making some connections. But it's generally not that hard to find out about events that are being put on, and very often they're happy for people to actually pop up and say that they would like to take part, because that's one less thing that's one less stall or whatever that they have to source practitioners for. So they're generally very happy to do that. And the other thing that I've found is that if some kind of roadshow or health day is being organized, not everybody is all that happy about going, okay, then I'll run a session for you. I mean, obviously it slightly depends on what their modality is, but generally if you offer to do something, so you know, a little self Shiatsu session or a bit of Qigong or something like that, they'll, again, that will fill up their program for them. They're very happy to let you do that. And those I have found are very useful in generating people who then want to find out more, so will come along and either have a treatment or join one of your classes. The other thing that I have found is that not every practitioner is going to sit happily with every single client group. So for example, for some reason or the other, people who are attracted to come and work with me tend to be either older people or people who have got some kind of long-term health condition. So jokingly in my house, they always say that I'm the queen of the clapped out people. But those, I think that, you know, that would be my natural fit. So I'm very happy working with those people, and you know, and I get good results. that other people would be maybe much more at home working with families or working with young children, expectant mothers, all that kind of thing. I think that there's a bit of mileage in finding out where your natural fit is and working towards developing what you do with them. And if you're lucky enough to live in an area where there are several practitioners that you can team up with, then each of you can then play to your strengths. And I think that that works quite well. I mean, we're just thinking back to my people with long-term health conditions and older people, I think because I have a lot of knowledge and understanding of what their needs are likely to be, it's very easy to slip into, when you're talking to other practitioners, very easy to slip into the language that they're expecting to hear. So, and I personally would be slightly out of my depth if I was working with pregnant ladies and children, because I haven't done that for such a long time. So it's kind of that there is a certain, I think, benefit in just knowing where you fit best, really. Your local authority, your local integrated care board will have a digital database on all the activities that are going on. And there has become a much bigger emphasis on keeping people moving, interventions that are alongside health but not actually part of health. And they are they're actually obliged to make sure that everybody can access those. So if you start off on your integrated care board's website, so in most areas it's called something like Let's Move and then the name of your county, and you can go on there and have a look and things will be listed. But you can also list yourself, and I've had to look not only in my own county but where I used to live down on the south coast. I know my way around their digital resources, so I had to look at theirs as well, and the neighbouring counties to me here, and they are relatively easy to access, and most of them also will allow you to post even single events. So for example, during Shiatsu Awareness Month, if you were only doing one or two things, you could put them up. They would stay up on there until the event was finished, and then you don't have to worry about taking it down because it will automatically come down. Because I think in the past that was always a bit of a problem, that if you were trying to find out what was going on, you were quite likely to come across something that was redundant, and then that's a bit off-putting. So you don't have to put all that work in to keep updating everything, because they've set it up in such a way that there's only current stuff on there.
Barbara, just interesting, for those of us who are in Scotland,
yep,
3 of us on this call, being in touch with your community link worker through your GP surgery.
Yep.
The GP surgery will have a link worker, and their job is to have all of these kind of resources, the classes of any sort of interest, yoga classes.
Yep.
Tai Chi, Qigong, but also things like, the men's shed or counseling or craft things. That is their job, to have those kind of resources. So even as a first port of call, going to your GP surgery and saying, can I speak to the link worker, or can you give me their email address? And then just saying, look, this is the kind of stuff that I do.
Absolutely.
That would be
absolutely.
And they will know how to put it onto an area health board wide resource thing. Yeah.
So some of them will do it for you. So down our side of the border, but sometimes they're link workers, sometimes they're social prescribers.
Yeah, it's finding out the jargon, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And the other thing which is interesting is that now that there's much more of an emphasis on doctors seeing people who have an urgent medical need and everybody else being managed by somebody else. A lot of the cancer treatment, well, for cancer, but also any long-term health conditions, that there will be some kind of coordinator. So the link workers will point you in the direction of a link worker who may be area wide, but will be organizing everything. So for example, in the East Midlands, there are separate cancer support networks for all the different types of cancer, and they organize lots of things and do what the link workers do, but specific to, you know, whatever somebody's condition is. But they have the power to, for example, book you to spend the afternoon teaching acupressure points to carers, or, you know, doing some qigong for relaxation for people who are going through chemo and things like that. So they do those bookings. It doesn't now go through the GPs, but the GP surgery is a very good place to begin. Or you can go through the website and just pop things up yourself. They're very keen about that as well. So you can do either. And then the other thing that I was going to say is that I think that my experience is that there's an awful lot of brilliant practice going on all over the place that we don't necessarily know about. So through the work that we've already done in the last couple of years, we have heard all over the place about people working really on brilliant projects. So one thing that I think is really important is to find a way of getting that shared so that it's a resource, and if somebody is thinking about doing something, that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, that they can build on other people's experiences. So I'm not exactly sure how to do that in the best way, because you know, it's already out there. So it's a question of getting people finding the best way of getting that shared. But I do think that's going to be very helpful. My original idea was thinking about something like you know, an interest group for people who are doing particular things, because very often on Facebook, and Elaine's answered one this week, haven't you, about somebody had a query about somebody with a particular condition, and has anybody got any ideas, and has anybody got any experience? And some brilliant responses came back, but I think on the Facebook page it's very easy to lose that, because then you get some other questions and other things coming. So even if you knew it was there, and in a few weeks time you think, oh, I remember reading that, let me go back and see if I can find it, on the Facebook page it's much harder to do that. So I'm still, any ideas that anybody can come that would really encourage people to share would be most welcome. So that's kind of community stuff. I don't know about anybody else, but I find that the Shiatsu Awareness Month is an absolutely brilliant way of just flying the flag for Shiatsu for a bit. So thinking about my particular client focus, I was at Age UK. I was at the U3A. I was popping up all over the place, but I sort of had an excuse to do it. So please don't ask us to have 2 awareness months a year. Might dilute the benefit, mightn't it? And then just thinking about, so we've kind of touched on this a tiny bit anyway, just talking about the community, but just thinking about formal services, I think that all of us would probably say, and maybe even from feedback that we've had, like when we had the Europe-wide Shiatsu research network, that actually in the end that there's no substitute for putting our hands on somebody. So once somebody has experienced shiatsu, you've pretty much won them over. So it's finding a way of doing that, I think, which is you know, again, and any ideas gratefully received. And then that idea of linking in via specific groups, and it's something that comes up over and over again in that kind of we need to really get formal services on board. We need some research to convince them of what we're telling them and what we know to be true. But you can't do that without a bit of credibility, but you can't get the credibility without doing the research. So that's a kind of, you know, one of those things that goes round and round a bit. But well, up until now, who knows if the focus will change a little bit now, but up until now it has very much been that in the delivery of health and social care, but you can't do anything without researching it. Any research that you do has to be purposeful, and so it has to be to really to support evidence-based practice. But that they've now got written into statute the fact that everybody has to be doing research and involving the public in the research. So the more that we can get out there and get involved in things, and then get our receivers to be asking for the research, that's another good way of moving those things on. So it is literally, and we've had, hopefully by the next time we do a support Zoom, there's been some very interesting work in the cancer field going on, and we should have some things that we can report. So we can do a whole support Zoom about working with people with cancer and hopefully what we might be able to do towards that. But there are, because it looks like one way of achieving what we need to achieve is to get the users to ask for it, then that might be something that is quite important for us to continue to build on, really. That idea of joint sessions is quite important. So I linked in with our city football club, and sometimes I have to do what I consider to be very mechanical seated exercise based on physio. But every now and again they come and say actually that they want to do some qigong this week. So that's another quite good way of getting in, so that you're sharing practice. So I have actually learned some things from working alongside the kind of more physio orientated stuff, and I know that they've learned stuff from me because I've heard them talking about it when they thought I wasn't there. So that idea of teaming up with people and sharing the practice, I think is quite a good way of just beginning to build a relationship. And then again, it's that idea of sharing good practice and what the successes are. There is, in terms of formal services, one thing that I've noticed, and again, I don't know whether the focus will change now that we've got different people in charge, but almost everything that has been funded and commissioned from formal services has been set up with the idea that once you've got it off the ground, then it will become self-supporting. So even cancer support services, it's had initial funding, and then they're working towards it being self-funding. So they've essentially withdrawn that bit of seed funding. So whatever projects we decide to set up, or you know, as people begin to share good practice and we see things that are a good idea, we have to bear in mind that sooner or later they will expect that to be running on its own, however we decide to do that. Okay, so I think those are my thoughts for the day. And now I'm after some feedback. So it's your turn now. I think Antonia has now had to go.
Well, thanks, Barbara. I'm glad I came today. I was feeling a bit mad today. But actually yeah, I was a bit, but actually this thing about getting involved in the community. In fact, a few weeks ago, I got in touch with a yoga studio that's just next door. So I'm going to start running some do-ins, but I can't do it every week. You know, it's like that kind of thing. You just talk about self-care again. It takes so much energy to come. It takes, I don't know what it is. It takes a lot sometimes to have faith, even to even have faith.
But it's almost that thing, isn't it? Because I think that sometimes that, oh my goodness, you know, if I say that I'm going to do something, then that's it. I've got that commitment and I'm going to, you know, it'll be a drag and I have to do it. But it's almost like by saying, yes, I can do it for you, but we could do it once a month. Let's do it on, you know, first Monday or whatever it is. It's almost like modeling what you're asking them to do to actually just shepherd their energies. So for myself, I have found that because I'm definitely the world's biggest people pleaser. So it is that issue of thinking about, wait a minute, what would I want to model? If I was my own client, what would I be saying to myself? And sometimes you just need to remind yourself of that. That's what I find anyway, because otherwise I'd be running around like a headless chicken.
I know, you almost have to start with something and then create something. And I even created a flyer and even a barcode, you know. So it was like almost willing something to happen before it happened.
Yeah.
So now I really have to do it. But it's nice to meet up with them because they're quite shy like me as well. And they're quite like, they're not this kind of, we got to get everything done. You know, they're quite gentle and quite shy.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be a nice collaboration. And they're also yoga practitioners. So hopefully, you know, and then the thought about getting in touch with the GP surgery, that's really such a good idea.
Yeah.
But that's given me some ideas today, actually.
Yeah.
It's given me a new kind of energy.
Yeah, great. That's good. Yeah, because I mean, my experience of being in contact with link workers, which I've had to do for a few people, is that they are very, very helpful. They're very knowledgeable, very supportive, and so on. Yeah, so that's great.
Well, the great thing about the link workers or the social prescribers or whatever they're called, where they are, and that idea was born in Scotland. It was born in Scotland and then brought down to the rest of us. Yeah. But is that they know what the provision is. Sometimes they know what the gaps are.
Yes.
Which is very useful. So when I went to Age UK, so I was at a health roadshow with my treatment chair. Nobody actually wanted a treatment because they'd all been doing aqua aerobics and they were all a bit buzzy. But somebody from one of the other stalls came to talk to me, and that's how I got invited to go to Age UK in the first place. But then they said, once I had done, and they asked me to do a taste session for their staff and then one for the people who use the facility. But once they'd experienced it, then they said, oh, we had tried a choir for the people with dementia and it wasn't really working very well, but we really think that because I had them just doing a little bit of partner work, and they said, oh, we think this would be absolutely brilliant. And so they'd thought it up. I didn't have to do any of the groundwork, but also that's what happened as soon as you put your hands on somebody, which I think is, you know, that's almost where we need to start from. If you can manage to get there, is, you know, if rather than trying to explain, because it's so hard. Was it at the Shiatsu Research Network when somebody said, I've spent 25 years trying to explain what Shiatsu is, and every time I explain it comes out slightly different, isn't it? Because it's it's body work. You can't tell someone what it is. They have to feel what it is. Yeah.
It's interesting your point about dementia there, Barbara, because when my father was still alive, from time to time, although he didn't have dementia, we used to get respite for him in a local care place that did respite for people with dementia. And it was before COVID, and it was at the time when I was organizing Karen Kelbautner-Vernick to come and do the samurai for older adults up in Glasgow. And I mentioned this to the manager of the home, and she said, "Oh, that is so interesting," or that kind of thing. We send somebody as a delegate to do that. And of course, then we didn't do it because of COVID. But they were really, really open to all sorts of activities for their elderly people within the care home. And in fact, most care homes have got an activities coordinator. So that's another place that you can go in and, either be doing little treatments, because a lot of care homes for older people actually provide somebody who will do, is usually aromatherapy or Reiki or massage or something like that. But the beauty of the samurai program is that you're teaching people to give shiatsu to each other. So there's interaction between the residents, which is quite a nice thing. But that is another kind of where we can be introducing shiatsu in a community setting, and then it starts to ripple out, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my experience of that, so I was actually doing a qigong class with a little bit, well, of course, most of the time you call it tai chi, don't you? But it was qigong we were doing, and with a little bit of self shiatsu in a few points. But the staff would often come and join in, and then what I found was I was getting members of staff who'd got bad backs and things like that, giving them, because the difficulty that you have if you're in there is that they're also busy, that nobody can stop and have a treatment. But what you can do is give them a little bit of advice, or one thing to do, and when you see them next week and they're looking completely different, they are then very likely to come and have a proper treatment in their off-duty time.
Can I just come in there as well, because it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting that we're doing this, because I was on another Zoom meeting at 10 o'clock this morning with the Touch for Health UK instructors, and someone was talking us through the use of Instagram to actually promote our business. And the really interesting thing that the person who was running the session stated was that it was all about identifying your demographic. And what she was stating was, and I found this quite interesting, is that one of the starting points is that you are your demographic. It's almost like.
So that's why I'm the queen of clapped out people.
Yeah. It's that idea of you are your demographic. It's your age group. It's your needs.
Yes.
It's why would you yourself seek the services of a shiatsu practitioner, and almost like modeling your provision around that. And it's that actually struck home, and it's not necessarily going out with your demographic. That will ripple out eventually, but it's this idea of identifying who your demographic is and what it is that you have to offer, what you almost have to offer yourself in terms of why bother coming for shiatsu. And it is that idea of getting that message out as to why is it so important that people do engage with shiatsu as a means of maintaining their health and well-being, rather than seeking treatment. It is that whole thing of like not specifically saying, oh, we can treat X, Y, and Z. It's all about maintaining health, well-being, quality of life, getting the most out of their life, enhancing performance. All of those things comes together. Well, that's my demographic. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And it's really interesting that you mentioned Instagram as well, actually, because when we were trying to recruit Antonia, that there was a huge age range of people who were applying for the job, but most of them were young enough to be my grandchildren. And so that was a very, very interesting spin on how we as the society reach out, because personally I would never ever go onto Instagram. I just wouldn't even think of it. But as soon as that had been mentioned, I realized in talking to my clients that a lot of them who are, you know, more at the senior end of life than the junior end of life do actually follow those channels, and that actually we probably need to be doing that more than we are currently doing. I certainly do. I mean, I will have to get myself an Instagram account, but you know, there was even one candidate talking about us being on TikTok, and I was thinking, well, I thought TikTok was for teenagers, but apparently not. But it's just interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, it's a body work. You know, most of us would say that to really understand Shiatsu, you need to receive Shiatsu, but then we've still also got to work with all of these digital ways of reaching people. It's an interesting balance.
Yeah, but that's, you know, that's where, I mean, the society already has its Facebook, it's Twitter now called X, it's Instagram, it's LinkedIn and everything else. And I'm quite sure that Antonia is going to be using those to very great effect.
Well, she will, and I hope she's going to teach all of us how to use it more as well.
I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure that will be something that, you know, we can reach out and ask and say, how, you know, how do we do this? And this is going to be something that will be quite helpful, I think. For us in just promoting our own businesses.
Yeah, absolutely exciting, as you say, both for the society, but also to empower us as practitioners in our localities as well. Yeah, definitely.
I really like the point that you made about more in-person connections and swaps and former members and things like that. Up here in Glasgow, I've decided this year that I'm not going to do, I was doing an evening practice class once a month, and I've decided I'm not going to do that anymore. But I'm going to do a general practice day, which will be open to all practitioners and students and anybody else. You know, graduates, former practitioners, people who are interested, and anybody can come in for a day and just do Shiatsu. And if they've got, you know, the students have got questions they want to bring about how do we work on this, or what was this technique, then we're just going to, you know, I'll just kind of cover that. So that's something that's going to be open to anybody. And in fact, you know, we had somebody who had trained in London and then hasn't done any Shiatsu for 20 years. And then she wanted to come and do our introductory day. And I emailed her, I said, why do you want to do our intro day? And she said, well, just because I want to make contact with Shiatsu people. And I thought, well, this is it. She can come to a general practice day and then just get back into the Shiatsu community. And I know that, Dawn, you're in Edinburgh, you're starting to do some kind of a getting together thing, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, before the younger group got started, I mean, I've been doing it for several years with peers, and then the new graduates from your school in Edinburgh decided they had this injection of energy. I don't know what happened, and they wanted to, well, they found it isolating, you know. So I joined, and some other people joined, and so we meet once, well, every 6 weeks, and it's nice. It's very nice. They're very, very good, and also, yeah, I've been doing the swaps, and I even asked one of them, well, actually, she's already a teacher here, but if we wanted to do a joint workshop. But she's away right now, so I thought I'll do a workshop, and I'll use that space next door.
Excellent.
And bring in some tips that I learned. I was in Vienna recently, so I'll bring some tips as well. Yeah. But when she comes back, will be nice to do something like that. And that'll be open to Shiatsu practitioners, actually. That's more. Yeah. Refine the touch, I would think.
Good. So that's rippling out. That's really great. That's good.
Absolutely. I think I still have a list. So this would be more than 10 years old, I think, when you had a paper list of who all the practitioners are. But maybe because I imagine that there are some people out there who we want to bring back into kind of, under our wing, who aren't on any kind of digital platform. So I don't know how we word of mouth maybe is how we get hold of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting though.
Yeah. Good. Great.
So there we go. Right, we've got 4 minutes.
Yeah. Lynn, have you got any ideas or anything you want to contribute?
I think probably nothing that hasn't already been covered. I feel like there's a lot of ideas out there. I'm very wary of Facebook, and I've never done Instagram. And I feel like it's something I feel I should do, and it's really something I don't want to do. And I'm much, much happier with the in-person stuff. And I think if we were talking about our own demographic and finding our fit, I think I'm much happier doing the in-person stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like that, just feeling uncomfortable. I find put something out on Facebook and I instantly get scams and things coming up that I'm not comfortable with, and it's it's just one of those, isn't it? It's just life today.
Although it's quite interesting. I was speaking to one of my trainees who's quite good on the whole digital thing, because we had an intro day that we were going to do, and then although we had advertised it lots on Facebook and so on, we just didn't get enough takers. And she said, well, do you know, things are changing now. She said people now want to have paper leaflets.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
that's good. That's good.
This seems to be the latest thing now, that people kind of want a little piece of paper or something like that, which I thought, well, that's great, because I can do that on my computer.
Yes.
And send those out. So
we're heading back to more authentic.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's the thing. It kind of goes along with the in touch thing. If you can give somebody, or put up something in the whole food shop window, which we used to do all the time. We used to get loads of people from the local whole food shop.
Yeah.
And that keeps it very local as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Which means that your demographic, it can feel a bit more solid, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you want to spread your wings, then you give your leaflets to other people who are going further away. Put this up in your neck of the woods. Yeah.
It's surprising, actually, how much overlapping happens. Unless it's just rural Lincolnshire. but especially if you're talking to people, you very quickly find out that there are lots of intersections where things overlap.
Yeah.
And I think that works quite well. Lynn, have you got lots of practitioners close to you, or are you?
Very few. There's very few in this area, unfortunately, and since COVID we've more or less halved. I think there was 6 of us before, and we're down to 3 now, and we're all fairly dispersed. We were having peer group meetings prior to COVID, and that seems to have dwindled now, and there's been a little bit of a push to try and get that going again, but it's not really happened yet. I hope it will. I think it's very valuable.
How far away are you from places like Bath?
About an hour.
All right. Okay. My geography of England is worse than I thought then. Yeah.
How far are you from the Forest of Dean?
Oh golly, probably a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Oh no, don't worry about that then. That is.
They say that the 6 of us that were here were within about half an hour of each other, which made it workable. On an evening, it made it something we could do. So yeah, maybe we need to push a bit harder and get that going again for the 3 that are left.
One idea, we're still trying to work out how feasible it would be, but one idea that we as the society had was trying to find a way of actually just reducing the cost of getting everybody together. So maybe, at least initially sponsoring a space, something like that. So you know, maybe, mind you, I think now that if we put it to a vote, I think maybe people would keep the bursary for the Shiatsu Awareness Month rather than put the money into support. I don't know, but that's something that we might think about.
Well, I think the annual bursary is something that for the last 2 years it's been for Shiatsu Awareness Month.
It has, and it's been super popular, hasn't it?
It's been very popular.
Yeah.
But it is something that we have to consider whether we want to put it into another area, because research had been something that had been suggested that we should have the bursary for members linked to some kind of research offering.
Yeah. And my own personal view, and I mean, as the board, we haven't discussed this, but my own personal view is that if we're going to be supporting some research, we need people to get together to be doing that research. So it's almost like we need little practice groups who can then support research. So that would be like a bit of a building block.
Yeah.
Or at least finding some way of pooling that experience, because it's hard enough being a practitioner when you're relatively isolated, but being a practitioner and doing research and not having support would be very hard.
Well, that's what really the society is here for. And so, you know, if you're doing research, then we're doing it as a group, supporting each other, because this is the thing that comes up time and time again. That we're trying to convince the world out there that, you know, we know that what we do is wonderful, but they want to have that scientific research. And so we need to be able to provide something that is going to satisfy people. And, you know, great research into Shiatsu has been done in the past, and so on. And the people within the Shiatsu Research Network have, you know, their website has got a whole rundown of everything that has been done, but we need to keep it going. You know, we need to keep it going. You know, we cannot ride on Professor Long's research forever. You know, it's very good, but we have to get some more done. And so the society is actually working on that. We've got, you know, some if not irons in the fire, at least some feelers out, and we have
plans afoot, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Good. Good. Okay.
Right. I think Robin has left us.
Robin has left. Yes.
Yes. Oh, there he goes. Okay. Bye, Robin. I wasn't looking at the chat at that moment, so it was nice of him to join us. Right. So just before we finish, any other thoughts or comments or things that we can do going forward? I am hoping, this hasn't been discussed either yet, but I am hoping that we can find a way of, at the pre-AGM discussion, the pad, to have all three of our new people just for a very short while to introduce them to members who are joining the AGM. I think that would be really nice, because it was lovely to meet Antonia, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to have a slot to meet the other two. Yeah.
Good plan. Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
We'll stop the recording now, Barbara.
I will stop the recording. If I find the off button, there we are. We've stopped.